Every September, thousands of people descend on the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, in order to celebrate the Mothman. In 2019, it was estimated between 10 and 12,000 people came to Point Pleasant to attend that year's Mothman Festival. And after a 2-year hiatus, the Mothman Festival came back in 2022. The first day alone doubled all previous attendance records when nearly 20 to 24,000 people showed up. In total, it's estimated between 30 and 34,000 people attended this year's Mothman Festival, one of which was me. This isn't going to be just any travel video. This is going to be a Mothman Festival West Virginia tourism survival guide. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm the best Virginian. I bring you West Virginia history and travel videos from across the mountain state of West Virginia. And if you think Mothman's a little bit sexy, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to take a brief look at the history of the Mothman, then we're going to talk about my experience at the Mothman Festival, and I'll give some travel advice that will help you if you plan on coming to the Mothman Festival or really just any West Virginia road trip in general. Because it's fall, and that's literally the best time to come visit West Virginia. The story of the Mothman, like all great sagas, began in Clendening, West Virginia in 1966. A couple of gravediggers reported seeing a black figure fly over them while they were working one night in a nearby cemetery. Later on in November 1966, two young couples reported seeing a large gray creature with glowing red eyes that proceeded to chase their car out of the nearby Tnt Area in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. If you want to learn more about the Tnt Area, check out a video I did on all the reasons why you should visit Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I'll put a little thingy to it up here and leave it down in the comments. In that video, I go over the Mothman Museum, some of the town, the nearby state park, and the Tnt Area near Point Pleasant. In the following weeks, there were several more reports and accounts of people seeing this large winged creature. Due to the popularity of Batman, and especially the Batman TV series, a local newspaper dubbed this creature the Mothman. Now, sightings of the Mothman would continue for the entire next year until roughly the collapse of the Silver Bridge, December 15th, 1967. This bridge collapse was responsible for the deaths of about 46 people. And to this day, many people believe the Mothman sightings are somehow connected to the bridge collapse. In 2002, Point Pleasant held the first Mothman Festival, and in 2003, the town unveiled the now iconic Mothman statue. 2 years later, the world's only Mothman Museum opened up, and since then, people have traveled from all over the world to see and learn about West Virginia's favorite cryptid. So for me personally, it's about a 3-hour drive from where I live down to Point Pleasant, which brings me to my first West Virginia travel tip, which is the journey is just as important as the destination. Everything in West Virginia is pretty spread out, and if you don't enjoy traveling down country roads, then West Virginia might not be the destination for you. Bring a friend, make a great travel music playlist, research how to get to where you're going and back, and look for places that you can visit along the way. I go as far as recommending, maybe plan a completely different route back home. Don't travel the same road to and back from where you came to. See more of the state, see more places, plan out your trip, but most importantly, pack a map. Maps of West Virginia are available if you order a West Virginia vacation guide, which is free from WV Tourism. They'll throw some free maps in there for you, but definitely have a map of West Virginia, plan out your route. You know what, pack 2, just in case for some weird example. I don't know, I'm just gonna pull one off the top of my head. Let's say you're looking at your map, the wind grabs it and flings it off a cliff while you're in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia. Have an extra, that way you won't get lost in the woods. And that advice is coming from someone that has basically spent the last 4 years getting lost in the woods in West Virginia. So back to the festival. Once I got within about 2 or 3 miles of Point Pleasant, traffic was at an absolute crawl. From Fort Randolph, which is about a mile and a half from the Mothman Museum, people were walking towards Point Pleasant faster than I could drive because traffic was backed up so much from just the sheer amount of people trying to get to and through Point Pleasant. Yeah, there were some crazy people who were parking a mile and a half away at Fort Randolph so that they could walk into the town of Point Pleasant. And after sitting in traffic for about 20-30 minutes at this point, I decided I was going to park at Fort Randolph and walk into Point Pleasant. For my 4% of viewers that are from Canada, when I say it's a mile and a half is roughly a little bit under 2.5K. So technically, if I would have parked at Fort Randolph, walked straight to the museum, and straight back to my car, I basically completed the Mothman Festival 5K. Which brings me to point number 2 that I would like to make. Wear comfortable shoes. Anytime, you travel to West Virginia or you go to one of these events, one of these festivals, wear some comfortable shoes. And, it wouldn't hurt to pack some extra socks, because the only thing worse than walking around in super uncomfortable shoes is walking around in super sweaty, nasty, uncomfortable shoes and then getting back to your car and having to drive 3 hours back home in soggy shoes. If you're going to the Mothman Festival, either get there super, super early, like an hour before the 5K starts, or just be prepared to walk, because those are really the only 2 options. Now, as I did my trek to Point Pleasant from Fort Randolph, there was a steady flow of people walking towards and from Point Pleasant, and as soon as I hit the intersection of 5th and Main, that's the intersection between the Mason County Courthouse and the Silver Bridge Historical Sign, it just became shoulder to shoulder, butt to butt, the entire way down Main Street, and not butt to butt in the good way either. The streets were filled, the sidewalks were filled, sides of the road were just lined with vendors, food trucks, charity groups, live musicians. It was a really surreal experience, just thousands of Mothman enthusiasts packing the streets. And the last time I was there in July on a random Tuesday, I might have seen, a dozen people the entire day on these same streets. Now there was just thousands of people packed in there, and it was really surreal and really awesome to see. The entire waterfront area was packed the same way. There were vendors, artists, they had concerts going on all day at the amphitheater. People had actually traveled to Point Pleasant by boat and were just kind of parked out in the river, just vibing. 4th Street, where the statue is, was just full of artists selling goodies. Again, lots and lots of people coming out, local businesses, artists, food trucks. It was great to see. I think nearly $1 million was brought in to local businesses and the state of West Virginia during this year's festival, which is fantastic. It brings us to our next rule: always have some cash on you. A lot of independent businesses can now accept cards and digital payment. Just have some 1s on you, have some 5s on you, have some 10s. Don't ask what I had to do to get those 10s, but definitely have some cash money on you. And if you especially like an artist or a performer or an organization or something, just slide them a little tip. Just give them a little something extra, just give them a tip. Almost said something else there for a second. And the other thing I found myself doing throughout the day, a lot of the food trucks and the food vendors would have lines 30, 40, sometimes 50 people deep, just these huge long lines of customers. And a lot of the local businesses, the brick and mortar businesses there in Point Pleasant, up and down Main Street, were fairly empty. I mean, yeah, they had a lot of people in them, but relatively speaking, like compared to what was going on the streets outside, very empty. But a lot of those businesses, they have snacks, they have coolers full of pop. You know, instead of staying in line for 20, 30 plus minutes, just get a can of Coke, you could go into any of these little stores, walk up to a cooler, pull out a bottle of pop, and have a beverage within a couple minutes, which in my opinion is way better than standing in shoulder to shoulder. It wasn't that bad weather-wise. I think it was like low 80s, high 70s, but man, when you're around like so many other people, it does not take long to just... I mean, I was a disgusting, sweaty manfish so quickly that day. I don't know how some of the cosplayers did it. There were people with very elaborate costumes on, especially Mothman-themed costumes, just decked out in all black. I was wearing a light gray t-shirt and shorts, and I was just dripping half the day. I don't know how some of these people did it and managed to look good while doing it. And the same thing applies for local restaurants. I got an opportunity. People have been telling me that I have to go to First and Main Burgers and Fries. It's this little restaurant right off Main Street, and surprisingly, while it was right down the road, like maybe a 4 or 5 minute walk from a lot of these food trucks and vendors and stuff, I had to wait in line behind like 5 other people. Like, it took me a whopping 10, 12 minutes to get my burger and fries, and it was amazing. That versus waiting in line 30, 40 minutes for something from a food truck. If you just do some research, you plan out your trip a little bit, you know what's there, you can definitely save a lot of time, a lot of frustration. And again, definitely check out First and Main Burgers and Fries. People have been telling me about it for a while, and I was not disappointed at all. Grab myself a sandwich, grab myself some fries, nice cold beverage, head down to the riverfront, had an excellent meal, just chilling, watching the river, listening to some live music. Like, that was the best part of the entire festival, in my opinion. And before we finish up on this topic, you know what else brick and mortar stores have that outside vendors didn't have? Air conditioning. And probably my favorite thing I saw all day was once I got down to the Mothman statue, there was a line of people in front of the statue waiting in line to get selfies with Mothman, and there was a line behind the statue of people wanting to get selfies with Mothman's butt, which I love seeing. Really, the only piece of advice I have left to give is if you're planning on going out to the Tnt Area, they were doing tours. You could hop on a bus, they would drop you off at the Tnt Area, they'd come back in a little bit and pick you back up, bring you back into town. Bring some shoes that you don't mind getting dirty, that you don't mind possibly getting ruined. The Tnt Area is a swamp. It's a wildlife management area, which I always say this when people ask me about wildlife management areas. It's an area that the state either doesn't have the time, the energy, or a plan on how to make accessible enough to be a state park. So it's a wildlife management area. It's a little bit more rugged, a little bit more swampy, a little bit more muddy. A lot of the trails are just kind of non-existent. But yeah, that was my experience at the 2022 Mothman Festival. It was crazy, it was crowded, but you know what? I still had a lot of fun. It was great seeing how many people just came out to celebrate the Mothman, to celebrate Point Pleasant, and it was absolutely amazing to see. If you ever have an opportunity, I would definitely recommend attending, especially if you don't mind super large crowds. But I think for me, I definitely prefer kind of having the town to myself on a random Tuesday afternoon. Like that's more what I enjoy. Anyways, y'all, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I hope you learned something today about the Mothman Festival, and really just West Virginia travel advice in general. Leave your best travel tips down in the comments. Share this video. Subscribe if you haven't. Mothman really wants you to subscribe to the channel. if you aren't able to ever attend the Mothman Festival, I'll put a link down below to the 24-hour Mothman live stream. Go check them out. Tell them the Best Virginian sent you. And, yeah, if you touch the Mothman booty the weekend of the Mothman Festival, you're on camera. So, there you go. But I'm going to wrap it up here. Stay wild, stay wonderful, and I'll talk to you Mothmen and Moth Mommies later.